I binge watched all of Season 1 of Dungeon Meshi, and I think you should too. Within the space of 24 hours, I watched all 24 available episodes, and this is what I thought about it. Going into Dungeon Meshi, or Delicious in Dungeon as it's also known, I was fully expecting a very light-hearted food porn anime without too much depth. A feel-good kind of anime you'd watch as a nice mood boost each week. And on the surface it is. It has a very chill, happy-go-lucky vibe with some nice comedic moments. It reminds me a lot of Konosuba in that sense. And the fantasy action elements where the party have to fight whatever they're planning for their next meal is a creative twist on the genre, and keeps things interesting in a way where other food porn anime never appealed to me. It's like adding a little bit of spice to your meal, you know. It could have been romance and drama, but in this case what makes this anime so appealing is an autistic guy who really wants to eat a suit of armour for some reason. My doctor says I needed more iron in my diet.
I don't think that's quite what they meant.
If you eat this, you'll die a mega death, because it's fucking metal! The only problem with this very light-hearted tone is that it's very easy to forget that the protagonist's sister is currently being eaten by a dragon. Yep, that's the plot of this anime. A group of heroes lost a fight to a red dragon and were sent back to the surface of the dungeon. But Fallon, the protagonist Laios' sister, fell in to the mouth of the dragon. So the group are in a race against time to get back to the depths of the dungeon before she is digested. Not that they exactly show a sense of urgency ever, which annoyed me at first, but I think this is actually a subtle glance into the deeper lore of the series, because being able to revive people is apparently pretty commonplace in this world. No collecting 7 Dragon Balls or alchemy needed here, just basic magic. Heck, each of the main characters mentioned that they've died a few times. Except for Senshi, the dwarf who joins them on their way back into the dungeon, as he's very opposed to magic in general, and believes the dead shouldn't be brought back to life as it's unnatural. And there are reasons he feels this way, but I'm trying to keep spoilers to a minimum here. But I think he's right, as it seems that the characters in the show have become desensitized to dying, and may not fully understand the value of life. My only other issue I had with this series was this weird feeling like things were progressing extremely fast, but at the same time no progress was being made. I think episode 6 is the perfect example of this, where Laios goes on a Mario 64 style adventure, diving inside paintings looking for food. And all of these paintings he visits have their own contiguous plot, but despite all the time and effort, he comes away empty-handed and empty-stomached. Then later in the same episode, Chilchuck, the half-foot rogue, encounters a mimic and has to solve an escape room to survive. A lot happens in this episode, but ultimately the party don't actually make much progress. But many of these seemingly random sub-stories are actually relevant, and referenced in the later half of the show in clever and important ways. Episodes 6 and 7 also felt significant to me, as it may be my imagination, but I felt like we started to see more injuries and blood appearing, which was a good indicator that things are getting more dangerous and the tone is shifting slightly, despite keeping up its lightheartedness. This culminates by the end of episode 11. I'm not going to go into details, but if you felt the show was getting stale and dropped it before episode 11, do yourselves a favour and give it a chance up to the end of episode 12. If you still aren't feeling it by that point, fair enough, but from this point on the tone of the series shifts, becoming much darker and serious, and you'll learn a lot more about the secrets behind the dungeon, and the world outside of it. The happy-go-lucky atmosphere is still there, just not as prominent from this point on. If episode 12 is where the real show begins, then I think the first 10 or 11 episodes were designed to lure you in with a false sense of security and get you attached to each of the characters, which it does exceedingly well. You expect Marcel, the elf mage girl, to be a stereotypical useless mage, who's only there to create memeable faces and reaction gifs. But she's a much deeper character as she shows her usefulness in the later floors, when things get tougher and you learn her backstory and motivations.
Well, well, well. Aqua, my greatest rival. People are saying we're quite alike, but, I'm not really seeing the resemblance.
I think that's actually just an Undine.
Huh? Fuck!
She watched the plan this time then.
All of my years of studying, my pride as an honor student, it all amounts to this.
Oh, some cool new spell?
Those things are packed with mana. It's like Gatorade for mages. And I'm feeling pretty thirsty right now. I'm going to turn that bitch into a chug jug!
I think the character that surprised me the most, however, was Chilchuck. I didn't like him initially, but he quickly became one of my favourites. He's actually very smart and very aware of the party's surroundings at all times, and he has some great character development too, learning to open up about his feelings towards his friends, but also himself. If I ever made an abridged series of this anime, I'd want him to be the Gordon Ramsay standing character for sure. It's fucking raw! Where's the basilisk sauce? Cabru and his group also seem interesting, and I'd love to learn more about them as well, but considering they are rumoured to be one of the strongest parties, they sure like to spend most of their screen time as corpses. If you did drop the show before episode 12, a few other things you'd be missing out on include Chilchuck going to therapy, Morgana from Persona 5, and this ogre girl I adore way more than I reasonably should. But can you blame me? She's so cute, look at her! Overall, this show is a 9 out of 10 for me personally. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a masterpiece, but it's a very fun watch and super creative in its ideas and executes them perfectly. The ecosystem of the monsters is very well thought out, and the biology of each creature plays a big part in both the fight scenes and how they're cooked. It actually made me interested in trying to cook more, and I felt like I was actually learning something. That is, until I realised I wouldn't be able to use like 90% of this knowledge in actual cooking. But come on, they even managed to make gardening look cool, damn it. I also love that each character is extremely unique, each with their own motivations and complex backstories. And I think the tonal shift happens at the perfect point in the story as well. Because if the show had continued the same way as the first 10 episodes, I could see myself getting bored, but then I was attached to the characters, and with the stakes being raised, I didn't want anything bad to happen to them. The lore of the world starts developing as well, so even when watching all 24 episodes in quick succession, it never felt like it was dragging on or dull. This show is definitely worth the binge watch. Oh, and both openings are very fun and lively as well. But I do have to wonder, did they choose Bump of Chicken to do the first opening because, you know, chicken, food, cooking, the whole theme of the show? You know what, never mind. Let me know in the comments which anime I should watch next. And let me know your thoughts on this binge watch and review style of video, because I'd love to make more if people are into it. But for now, I need to end this video. All this talk of food's making me hungry.